I've made it to Philadelphia for the Philly Show, one of the most historic sports card shows ever. Started in 1975, the Philly Show is known all over as being an incredible show, not just for vintage, but now with a whole variety of different types of cards and different attractions for people that come to the show. And now, today on this show, I get the opportunity to sit down with Joe, who's the current owner of the show and who runs the show, as well as Dave, the previous owner of the show. And we're going to talk about the history of the Philly Show, what makes it so special, and why card shows continue to tick despite the fact that the card market has been soft. So let's get started. Here we go. Dave, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Excited.
Thanks, Geoff.
It is a lot of fun here to be in Philadelphia and to get to experience this show. This is my first time that I've ever been to the Philly Show, but ever since I got back into cards about 5 or 6 years ago, people have said to me, the Philly Show, the Philly Show, the Philly Show. The Philly Show has a reputation of being one of the best card shows in the country and one that's certainly gone on for a long time. And I think that that reputation's built up over many years. And now I know, Joe, you're involved in the ownership of it today. Dave, you were previously running the show as well. So I'm excited to explore the history of the show and understand more, but also maybe to start, love to hear a little more about your backgrounds and then just kind of talk about the card show scene in general right now, because I find it fascinating that despite how wonky the card market has been over the last couple of years, shows like this continue to do unbelievably well. It's exciting to see. But anyway, Joe, tell everybody more about you.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. How long we got? So basically my history with the hobby started a very long time ago as a small kid. And I happened to have a neighbor when I was about 11 years old who was not only a big card collector, but actually ran shows in northern New Jersey at a hotel. And when I got to be about 12 and he had asked me to come help him and sort of work his table. So that's what I started doing at 12 years old. I'll go real quick through it all. Loved it. Still love it today. Still collect today fully. 15, 16 years old, convinced my history teacher in 85-ish, 86 to open a card store. Told him, listen, I'll run it when I can. I was playing a lot of sports and ended up then starting a mail order business in the SCD in the 90s and then purchased the card show from him and then went online with eBay in 98 and had a good friend of mine that really fast forward, I was doing all the show circuits. I was doing all the nationals. I was doing this show. I was doing the Chicago show, the New York shows. And I had a friend of mine that had got involved with the Chantilly show down in Virginia and asked me to get involved there, which I did, which in turn led me to, Dave and I had been friends for for many years, and I had done a lot of business with hunt auctions over the years. And he approached me and just sort of said like, hey, I want to talk to you about Philly. I see what you're doing down in Chantilly. And fast forward through that, basically Dave, wouldn't let me not buy the show. We did all we did all the financials, and then you're just doing business and you're looking at numbers, and I didn't know how to go tell him no, so there's no other way to say no. So I just walked up to him and I was like, we were standing at the Boston show and I said, man, it's not going to work. And he's like, well, no's not going to work. So there you go. We figured out how to make it work. We got past the numbers part of it and talked about what the dynamics were. And one of the other things he did say to me, which was very, very, very true, was he said, Joe, listen, you know how my business has gone. His hunt auctions business has exploded at the same time. So something has to suffer a little bit. And, staffing and in this industry, as a lot of people know, it's very hard to get really good, knowledgeable people. And so he was spread pretty thin. The show itself maybe wasn't running optimally. And he said, Joe, I'm telling you, I promise you, we've known each other for 20 plus years. It's teed up. It needs work. It needs time, but it's teed up. And I took a shot. And, he made it make sense from a financial standpoint. He said, I'll stand by you. I'll hold your hand for a little bit, but not too long because I can't. and here we are, 7, 8 years later, and we've grown now. When Dave purchased the show, he moved it to the Valley Forge Casino, which is about 6 miles from here. And that building is about 52,000 square feet. Everybody loved it over there because you could just set up and go right up to your room. It was super cool. Like even if you need to run up to your room for 10 minutes. Anyway, and then we decided we were having issues with capacity, right? We just had so many dealers that wanted to do the show, and this building was available, and Dave and I went back and forth for a very long time. And finally I decided to make the move, and he was like, all right, I'm going to trust you on it. And now we're in 120,000 square feet, and we're about to expand even bigger. We're going to be next year, 2024, we'll be in about 160,000 square feet. We just anchored and brought in eBay as a sponsor, long-term sponsor for the show, which is fantastic. And that's the real quick overview.
And you do this 3 times a year here in Philly too.
This is 3 times a year. It used to be 4, not while I owned it, but the original show was 4 times a year. They kicked the May show out quite a number of years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't even know. Did you have the May show?
I don't believe we ever did, from recollection. I think that was back to Bob Schmier, who started the show.
So so it went to 3 times a year, and it's always March, September, and December, and that's the way it's always been. And yeah, it really is a foundational hobby show, and I think that's the real key to it is the history. There's a lot of great card shows out there. Believe me, I traveled to them. I just went up to Toronto. I like to see what everyone's doing. And but this show, there's just something about it. I don't know if it's the fact that Topps manufactured here, in Derry, Pennsylvania. Fleer was down in Philadelphia. All the people on the East Coast have basements and attics. There's plenty of places to store stuff. But there's a magic about this show that it blends the vintage with the modern, with the memorabilia, with the TCG that's integrated itself. So it's a really special show, and the people that have done it for years. You walk this floor now. Granted, we've expanded a ton over the last couple of years, which again we're very careful about how we do that. We still have a very extensive wait list, but we're very conscious of the crowd versus the booths, and everyone's here to make money and have a business. But it's just sort of got this thing that no other show has. It just has this thing, like some of those guys up in the front of the show have been here for 30, 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. And now your company is also involved in the national next year, helping to manage that as well.
Correct. Yeah. With a different set of partners.
Yeah.
Jimmy and Brian from that, people in the hobby know them. They run all the New York shows, the Long Island shows, the White Plains shows. And that's again, a separate entity. But yeah, we are super excited about that as well. And really can't wait to unveil a lot of things with you in the future. So
well, good.
Not too distant.
We're excited about that. We're not talking the National today. We're talking the Philly show, but that's exciting to hear what you have in store for the National as well.
Yeah.
And Dave, how about you? What got you involved in the Philly show? You were obviously running it before Joe. How did you get involved, and what are you up to these days?
Yeah, there is always these long sort of winding stories that get you to this place, and the thing about this show, as Joe said, it's different. It's different than any other show in the country. I mean, I'm biased. I could say it's the best show, but it's not just saying it really is. I mean, quite frankly, results, partnerships, followings, whatever you want to go by. So, as we sort of evolved, and not indifferent to Joe and not indifferent to most of us, we started doing, whether you started doing a mall card show or a local auction or whatever it is, which is sort of the way I started. We developed into absolutely an auction house by trade, and working with Major League Baseball for 25 years and the NFL for 20 years, and sort of the league relationships and lots of sort of portals or primary source materials, working with players and their families. And Bob Schmier, who I believe he was one of the original partners in the show with the EPSCC club in '75, but with Ted Taylor and some names you see in these old programs. But then Bob, as the show and the business, exploded. It used to be in Fort Washington, and then it just evolved, and they lost the building and went to Reading. And Reading was a challenge. Nothing against Reading, Pennsylvania, but it's not near a major airport. It was at a very challenging location, and the hobby was experiencing, I don't want to say a downturn, but some problems. And Bob was getting older, frankly, and I think he just got to a point where he's like, I just don't want to do this. And I'm not going to say that nobody would have took over the show, but I'll tell you, there weren't a lot of people raising their hands at the time, and for me, it really had nothing to do with finances. It was, I don't want to see the show go away. Any show that's been around since 1975, and being from this area, meant something to me, and I think to the hobby, as Joe said. And I think as much as everything's transferred online, bidding is online, all these different things are online, and there is a person-to-person necessity to this industry, which really answers your primary question. Mm-hmm. How are these shows still surviving when there's so much ability to do things online? Because at some point, if none of us want to interact with each other, handle the items, other than just shipping stuff from one place to another, there's a place for all of it, is I guess what I would say. So, we talked to Bob. And not indifferent. Actually, now that I think about it, Bob really didn't take no for an answer either. And we ended up doing a deal that was a real challenging deal, to tell you the truth. There really wasn't an option. Bob, and I say this with love, he's passed away with, affection, was a tough person, very tough. And dealers loved him because of what he did for the show, but he was very tough. And was sort of, here's the deal. You don't want it? No problem. It is what it is. So we took it over. It worked really well, but we were spread thin. I have no problem in it. We just couldn't do it. Not properly. That's the key word. Not what it deserved to have. And so fast forward, and Joe's done a wonderful job, and his team, of really expanding it and changing it. But also we both talk a lot, quite frankly, throughout the year about changing, but also remembering what its roots are. Yeah. Because that's what really is, in my opinion, the difference between this show and every show in the country. This is what they've been able to do. It's a credit to Joe, I guess in some part to us, and Bob Schmier too. Don't lose what grew you to the point in the first place, because this show has something that no other show has. It's got the history, it's got the legacy, but it also has the current strength. And that's very hard to keep, so as long as that balance continues, and that's all you can see is it continuing right now, expanding, it's great. It's bar none. It really is the best show in the country. And the national aside, that's a different type of thing. But regionally, I don't see any show that can compete with this.
Yeah. And you're expanding the show. You're expanding the show despite the fact that, the card market has slowed down a little bit over the last couple of years, at least if you look at prices. Now, if you look at other metrics, it seems like in many ways it's actually sped up, right? And obviously there's a lot more attention being brought into the card market today than ever before through Fanatics and through everything that's kind of going on there. But you have, it seems like there still is a lot of interest and there still is a lot of engagement, even though prices may be down. Joe, what gives you the optimism to continue to grow and expand the show, even though dealers would tell you the market is a little soft right now?
Yeah, I mean, the expansion is always an area where my finger is on that pulse. Like it's not an expansion necessarily solely about money. Everyone that's in business is in business for a profit. There's more, like Dave said, there's something about this show that just has a different aura about it. And the expansion part is not solely adding dealers, right? It's a good example would be the partnership we just signed with eBay, right? I've had partnership opportunities for the last 3 years. I've bounced them off Dave over and over and over again. And we decided our approach was going to be, we were going to wait for the right partner that we felt. And with eBay's not only dedication to our space now, because it was a frustration point in the 90s when sports cards weren't generating that kind of money, it made sense, right? So where I'm going with that is now with eBay in here, it's going to allow us to use some of the finances from that partnership to expand the show in different ways, right? So last show, we knew the eBay partnership was going to be launched here in December. So we added a 2,400 square foot kid zone, okay? And that encompasses, it's brand new to the show. It encompasses a 1,200 square foot area for trading cards only with round tables and chairs. You got to be a kid. No adults are in there. That's the way it's designed to be. A parent can certainly stand in there if they want to be near their child or whatever. It's wide open. It's on the main show floor. And then right next to that is more of like a fun zone. We've got a speed pitch where you can win prizes. We've got a quarterback toss where you can win prizes. We've got cornhole games. So that's 2,400 square feet that really generates no dollars per se if you're looking at it from purely business. But what it does for this show, like I couldn't believe it when we launched it last show. It was packed. Friday was decent because we really it's more of an adult crowd on Friday because it's a nighttime show. Saturday and Sunday it's like from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. we're kicking kids out, and then Sunday morning from 9 to 3 and we're kicking kids out. So that's an area where when you say expansion, it's more about what components can we add to the show to make it an overall experience. We're very conscious of our admission price. We're very conscious of family friendly. Obviously, most shows and most events, take care of military, which we're big on that as well. But we want, in essence, our show to be an area where the core collector can come, the guy with his list, and he can sit down at a table and add to his 65 set and his 72 set. And then we want the family to be able to come and the adults to pay to get in. And there's face painters and there's kids zones and there's and it's not a ring the register kind of thing. It's like you walk in the door, you come, you have an experience, you have a good time, and we're going to grow that component. That component will continue to grow. And quite honestly, the footprint of vendors is very much subjective to exactly what our industry is doing. If our industry retracts, you will see the numbers retract. I'm a very transparent person, as we will be with the national. There'll be a lot of information that we'll share that just was no one knew. It was all speculative. With the Philly show, same thing. I'm on the floor all the time. That's all I do is walk the floor. I talk to my dealers. I want to know the truth. I've known a lot of these guys for 25, 30 years. I want them to tell me, hey, I didn't have a good show. And I want to think, all right, well, this guy's been doing this 25 years. That could be a crowd issue, and if the amount of booths in there don't support the crowd coming in, then that's on me. My job is to bring the people in, but it also has to be a balance. So that's really my approach is it's really all about the whole event as a whole. It's not about, hey, if I roll up this carpet in this area we're interviewing right here, I could save $400, but my VIPs deserve to be treated like VIPs. So when you say expansion, yeah, we're definitely expanding from a footprint standpoint, but it's more about it's allowing us to have a better experience. It's allowing the crowd to have a better experience. When we were at the casino, it was great. It was a great environment. I love it. There's so many elements about it that we miss. We still talk about the casino, and it just wasn't creating a good experience for people. It was the last show we did there. It was packed.
There's just not enough space.
Packed. Like you can't even turn and move and trade and do the things you need to do. So I think it's a couple of things. I think, East Coast is primarily a very good area for trading cards. This spot in general, this show in general, has had the magic touch a little bit to it for many decades, and it's seen many peaks and valleys in our industry, which Dave and I have both experienced. I can't tell you how many cycles that we've gone through, at least 4 or 5 major ones. And yeah, for the expansion, it's more about changing the dynamic of the show a little bit and adding in new components than it is about, are we still in explosives, phase of our industry? We all know, what's going on. Everybody in our industry sees the little bit of slowdown and pullback in modern cards and, some of the different areas where everybody is reflecting now and trying to figure out like, where is it headed and where is it going? Guys like Dave and I and another 100+ dealers out on that floor, we've been through it so many times, and it's almost like real estate investing, right? It goes, it goes, it goes, it goes, it goes, it retracts, and then a lot of people jump in when it retracts because they know it's just, and listen, look up a 52 mantle. That's all you got to do, right? Take one card, right? Just take the history of the 52 mantle from 1952 and just look at it, right? And then you can go with the next 10 really good cards. Is it going to go forever? Who knows? Is anything going to go forever, right? But the 50-year history tells you it's a cycle, right? So again, I know the general question was about the expansion of the show. It's more like it was just a little bit overdue, and we got the right time, we got the right partner, and we chose to start to roll out some of these really cool things to make it feel more like an experience too, so, but we're trying to retain the card show.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure part of creating the experience as well is making sure you've got the right mix of dealers and cards for the people who are coming in the door. And one thing that I've noticed, the Philly show is known for a lot of vintage. A lot of card shows you go to are 90% plus ultra modern.
Yeah.
The Philly
Yeah.
show, and I've obviously spent a lot of time on the show floor today, there's a lot of vintage, and there's a good amount of ultra modern as well.
There
But
is
there's a lot
actually
of
now,
vintage.
yeah,
You see,
yeah.
you see actually quite a mix. Is that something you intentionally try to create to appeal to different pockets of the collecting audience?
Well, for sure, yeah. Traveling to other shows, which I do, you can see where the growth is, right? So there was explosive growth there. So you want to bring that in to the fold of what you have. But again, to Dave's point, we are very careful. We don't just move super fast. It's not super speed we're doing things. So yeah, if there's an audience there, and again, this show also traditionally really didn't have autograph guests. It really was never about the autographs. It was always a card show. Bob's model was local Phillies, cheap,
They were free.
one
The
free
guests were
guest,
free. The
one free
autograph
guest,
guests were
or
free,
$10.
yeah.
It was never about that.
Yeah.
So that's another element where Dave really ramped it up when he took it over, and then we've been expanding on it as well. So all those different dynamics, wrestling cards, soccer cards, non-sports cards, TCG, art. Art has become huge, sports art. So all of those elements are very valid, and they bring in new audiences. Like some of our vintage dealers, back when we were really pumping in some autograph guests, had some things to me to say about it. Like,
That's politely worded.
number one, why is the PA system going constantly? I can't do transactions. I said, you have to bring sports fans into a arena where there's sports things happening, and give it time. It's like a seed, being planted into the ground a little bit, right? Let them see it. Let them experience it. Let them go meet their current modern athlete. I'll guarantee you they're going to come buy your Willie Mays autograph at some point, or Joe Montana, or whoever it is. It's going to find itself. I mean, you're a collector. I'm a collector. Dave's a collector. My collecting habits have certainly changed over the years, and I get hot on things for a while, and then I cool down on things. It's all really about the whole thing. Like, you're either a collector or you're not, in general, right? So if you can put people in this big arena, it may introduce them to something that they never even really kind of thought about. And maybe a guy that collects vintage now is collecting some modern stuff. And he's like, you know what? I really like so-and-so from XYZ team. I'm gonna pick up his signed jersey card. That would be a cool thing to have. So yeah, I think having elements where you're touching a lot of different areas, but it's the same communal feel, is really important, to long-term, successful growth. So.
Yep.
What about events beyond the show, right? So I know you're doing a big trade night here as part of the show. Trade nights, I feel like trade nights and trading, they're perceived by different shows in different ways. I've heard some shows don't love encouraging that necessarily. Not all dealers are necessarily in favor of that because they don't want people at a trade night doing deals with each other. They want people on the show floor doing deals with them. So not every dealer is necessarily in favor of it. You've decided to embrace it. Tell me what the trade night is like and why you decided to embrace that here.
I think it ties into sort of what I just said about all encompassing, right? There was obviously, through post-COVID, so much demand, right? Demand was off the charts, that these shows were closing, and the trade nights sort of developed into their own thing. If you cut those things off and you don't embrace them, you're either going to turn people off from the excitement level when they're not done. I'm done at the end of the day at 6 o'clock. It's been a long day for me, but who's to say, another guy that wants to go for another 4 or 5 hours. So to give them a platform where they can continue to enjoy what they're doing is really the importance level for me. I certainly understand my dealer's point of view, like 100%. Like, and that's exactly why, as a matter of fact, right before I saw you out on the floor, I went and put signs out and had signs out on the concession area food tables because people were actually trading cards there. So I don't want that happening, because to me that's a direct effect to the floor and what's happening with the dealers. And the same thing with the kid zone. We had some adults in there starting to transact, and my security guys are all, you know, plain clothes, and they just walk around politely and say, "Hey bud, you know, we need to have you out of here." So for me it was a no-brainer, right? I love collecting. I get it. You know, if you have that passion and that feeling about cards and memorabilia, you just want to be around like-minded people that feel that same energy. And there's night owls, right? And card shows traditionally aren't night owls, right? It's traditionally a daytime show. So yeah, it was really sort of simple. And our trade show is pretty much, I would say, in line with some of the other ones. You know, we have some giveaways, some prizes. We're not really restrictive. We don't necessarily require a badge to come in. We prefer it, but we don't over enforce it. We see a lot of dads come in with their sons, and you know, moms and even, you know, daughters come in and collect, and it's a good way to introduce them too, where it's maybe a little less intimidating, you know, slightly, because it's just more like about trading. And I know there's cash transactions going on and things like that. But again, like I said, it's going to happen. I'd rather it here in our building and us have some input on it and be able to provide some gifts and drinks and food and prizes under our roof and with our name attached to it, and show the support. So
I want to hear a little more about the history of the show. Dave, you've been obviously involved with it for a long time. When is the first time that you ever came to the show, if you can remember?
I was 11. I remember that. And I remember that cards that were $2.50 seemed a really expensive proposition to take on at that point. I think what's really unique about this show, and we've talked about it a little bit, but those inceptions and all the stories you'd hear, right? Like do you remember when that Babe Ruth jersey walked in? I'm not kidding either. I mean, multiple Honus Wagners, multiple for sure.
each of 6 sets,
absolutely
complete
would
sets.
just walk in, and I mean, I was really young. I remember, like, you know, when you're that young, you don't pay attention to all that sort of intricacies, but the dealers and the stories, even when it grew, and you know, I remember just the transactions. It's hard to explain to the dealers now that have come into this what it was like. I mean, you would literally be walking down the row. Somebody would give you a T2-6 set to purchase. While you're walking back, somebody would consign a Roberto Clemente game used jersey. I mean, I'm not making it up. And I don't know of another show in the country that just even came close to it, which is also why it grew to be what it was, because word spread. Dealers, as things evolved, the market evolved, auction houses, it wasn't an option to be here. You had to be here. Authentication companies, not an option to be here. You had to be here. And that's carried forward. Have some things changed? Yeah, a lot's changed. And but that history and that it's very difficult. It was the biggest challenge that we had during our ownership period by ourselves, was trying to explain to dealers as a whole, which you will never please. Everybody's going to you will never please every dealer. It's not possible. But we tried to explain to them, to the point where I think a couple of times I actually got on the microphone before the show set up and said, "This is why we're doing this. I know you're ready to you know, pitchfork us, but you can't. It's very difficult to keep all those elements you all love. And yet you want to be able to move out in 30 minutes on Sunday, and you want to get home. I understand all these things, but you have to pick." And Joe certainly knows that much more than I do with the different show venues that he operates, but there's a give and take. And I think as long as everybody is somewhat reasonable, my goal was always, look, if you've had a phenomenal show, if it's packed in here, if it's busy, and your complaint is that there's too many people for you to wheel your dolly out of here to pack out early on Sunday, there's not much I can do to help you. But still, through all those challenges, economically, you know, market conditions, weather, major disasters to buildings, I could go on and on. This show just is resilient. It just keeps
been moved so many times.
Yes, and it's just moved. Even when Bob Schmier had to move it to Reading, I think it was like a farm building or something. It was like a factory.
A very crazy building.
It was a factory.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't figure out why you were even going there, and it's still as much as it was having trouble then. It was, which is what led to all
The
this.
hobby was flat.
But that's exactly right. And I think a lot of these are parallels. You know, whether you have a kid zone, whether you have a different autograph area, or whatever you want to try, the whole point is you need to keep evolving and trying, and then, you know, peel back when you need to, retain the roots that you need to, but continue to push forward. And, you know, I listen, I told somebody tonight, I told a dealer I've known for decades tonight, that I've been wrong a lot about this industry. I mean, a lot, because I did not think it was going to not last, but evolve and grow the way it has. I've just been wrong, and I'm thrilled that I was wrong. And I think that shows like this only serve as great vehicles to continue that growth. And it's a shame there aren't more of them, and because there really could be. Maybe not as old as this one. The model's not hard. It's use common sense and don't make it about scraping every last dollar. And as Joe mentioned, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in any industry, I don't think. That's been pretty well proven. But in this one, the dealers see it, the clients see it, the customers see it. And that in and of itself causes more problems. So it just do what you do, expand when you can expand, and do right by your dealers and your clients. You'll be fine.
Joe, you brought a couple of historical pieces from the show here.
Oh, I did, yeah.
That I'd love to see these.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of our dealers, I had mentioned to a couple of our dealers that the National started curating some of the old vintage National material. And it just, when I heard that, I was just like, Philly show. Like, I gotta, like, so I started to walk the floor and I started to tell some of my older dealers that have been here forever, guys, if you have anything. And super cool. One of my dealers, Tom Spiker, walked up to me and he handed me not one but two of the original. I'm not sure the best way to show this on camera, but the original programs.
That's amazing. From 1975, Saturday, September 27th, 1975, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and it's they were smart enough to know to put Hannes Wagner on the cover even then. And it really doesn't even look like it's been looked through very much. I mean, this is probably the second or third time I looked through it. But it's just a super cool, nostalgic piece, you know, of memorabilia from the show. You know, there's a couple of other programs in here from the different locations that it was in. One of the other cool pieces that Dave hasn't even seen is, so Bob Schmier, so Robert E. Schmier, 100 Years of Philly Sports Memorabilia, was the author of this book, 1883 to 1983. Yep. So in 1983, Bob, who was the promoter that wrote this entire catalog, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a sentimental special page for me. So this was one of the early shows in Spring College, which is the same show where Bobby Shantz was the autograph guest.
Okay.
Well, when I took the show over in 2017, I had Bobby Shantz as a guest, and he's been here every single show that we've done under my ownership and running it, and he's 96 years old.
Wow.
He's the oldest living baseball MVP. He was the 1952 MVP in Major League Baseball. He was
the MVP Mantle's rookie year. Well, I guess Mantle was what, 51.
And in the All-Star game, he struck out in succession. I don't know if I have the order right. Whitey Lockman, Stan Musial, and Jackie Robinson in 1952.
Wow.
Yeah, and Bobby will be
tell
here
you about it.
Yeah.
and Bobby will be here on Sunday.
Wow.
So this was super cool to see this. I opened it and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, Bob was here in 1978 and here we are." And he's still here, and he's been at every show. He's never missed a show.
Look at that evolution. You're talking about a 96-year-old player from the 50s who will be here, and you'll have Bryson Stott here.
Yeah.
The current second baseman for the Phillies. And that's sort of the whole point. It's not indifferent than the model that's on that floor. You can have the cards from the current day, and you can have a card from the 1890s as well. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's cool stuff.
I imagine one thing that's changed over the years as well is the type of cards, because today on the show floor, I'd say I saw football cards more than I saw baseball cards.
Oh, wow.
And that's probably quite a bit different, at least with the, you know, obviously the modern, ultra modern stuff, right? Definitely. Obviously the vintage is still predominantly baseball, although I did see a little bit of vintage football. But with the modern, ultra modern I saw a lot of football out there on the show floor today, and not as much baseball. I was walking around looking for Phillies. I didn't see a lot of Phillies. I saw a whole lot of Eagles. Of course, they're in season right now,
I was
but
going to say,
you know, but
that has a lot to do with it. Is
sure.
the time of year and the current and look, that is a reflection of the current sports. I mean, baseball's actually had the most popular year they've ever had as far as attendance and revenues last year, but it's different. It is, and you're seeing the international expansion, like Joe mentioned, soccer, football, basketball, baseball is now going to be in London next year for the first time. So, but I think it's that diversity that's what makes the show strong, and also it's that's the dealers being intelligent and reading the market and understanding what should I bring this time. Maybe if I can promise you one thing: had the Phillies won about a month ago, the show would be very very different
probably
than it would be today.
Stuff,
But you've also got the luxury right now, and this is sort of a comical thing, but the Eagles are 10-1. The Phillies were in the NLC. You know, so you've got choices, and that can actually, with a regional show, right? It can drive what a dealer is going to focus and bring to showcase at an event like this.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that's driving a lot of the Jalen Hurts cards that I saw all over the show floor today. Many of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dave said it all right there. The Philly sports market is hot.
Yeah,
you know, there's even the Sixers are doing really well. You know,
So for somebody who's never been in the Philly show before, they're watching this, and maybe this has inspired them to want to check out this piece of sports card history in the future. What do they have to look forward to in 2024 with the Philly show?
Well, with 2024, will be more expansion in the areas that would be complementing the show. So I would say the kid zone will be expanding. There'll be more interactive experiences. We're working on a little bit of a platform now with our 2024 lineup of athletes. The athletes don't come far enough in advance to really plan out strategically you'd like to ideally, but there'll be interactive events with the athletes. You know, I don't really want to be a spoiler on anything, but there'll be kids pitching lessons, batting lessons, throwing footballs. You know, an element of that is the next level we're hoping to go to as far as the main show floor. With regards to the running of the show, we plan on expanding the Saturday hour a little bit just to handle the demand that's still obviously there. And then really just continue to listen to our audience and listen to our dealers and talk to them about what else can we do to make the experience better for everybody overall.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that really Joe's said it very well. And I think, you know, when you've got the best restaurant in town, just keep serving what you serve, but add a new dish here and there to keep people interested. And this is it's fun to see it happen too. It really is. Joe and I both care about the legacy of the show. It is a business, obviously, but I know I can speak for both of us. Like it means a lot to us personally, and that's cool. It's cool to have that meaning and yet still see it function at an extremely high level as a business model.
Yeah. Very, very neat. I love the analogy. It's like the restaurant's doing well, continue to serve the core, but add a new dish every now and then to spice it up and raise it up a level. I like that. Smart. Joe and Dave, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for sharing the history of this with us. This has been very wonderful, and it's a pleasure to be here at the Philly Show.
Thank you. We appreciate it too.
A lot.
Absolutely. And for everybody out there, just a reminder, you can see the full-length Geoff Wilson show, not just on YouTube, but also on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. So make sure you are subscribed everywhere. Give this a like. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Take care.